The fire crackled softly, casting flickering shadows on the faces of the new rangers gathered around it. The night was thick with the sounds of the forest, rustling leaves, distant hoots of owls, and the occasional snap of a twig. I sat across from them, the weight of my next tale heavy on my mind. "Tonight, we need to talk about Rule 11, I began, my voice low and steady. "If you see a figure hanging from a tree, do not approach it. It is not a corpse, but a manifestation of the forest's malice, waiting for its next victim." It was a misty autumn evening. I was on a routine patrol, deep in the heart of Whispering Pines. The forest was shrouded in an eerie fog, the kind that makes everything look like it's draped in a ghostly veil. The leaves crunched under my boots, and the air was crisp. I was following a familiar trail, the one that winds around the old oak grove. Suddenly, through the mist, I saw it, a figure hanging from a tree. At first, I thought it was a tragic accident, someone who had lost their way and met a grim fate. I felt a pang of sadness and a strong urge to help, to see if there was anything I could do. As I approached, the temperature seemed to drop. The forest fell unnaturally silent, as if holding its breath. That's when I noticed something was off. The figure wasn't swaying with the breeze. It was perfectly still, almost as if it was aware of my presence. I got closer, my flashlight cutting through the fog. The figure looked human, but there was something wrong. Its limbs hung at odd angles, and its eyes seemed to follow me. That's when it hit me. This wasn't a corpse. This was something else. Something malevolent. I remembered the warnings from the veteran rangers, the stories about the forest's malice and how it could manifest in terrifying ways. I backed away slowly. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but I forced myself to move calmly. As I did, the figure seemed to twitch, as if it was coming to life. I turned and walked as fast as I could without looking back, the oppressive presence of the figure pressing down on me. I made it back to the ranger station, my heart pounding in my chest. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that figure. Its twisted limbs, its eyes following me, its presence heavy and malevolent. Over the next few days, I couldn't shake the feeling that the forest was watching me. Every time I went on patrol, I felt the weight of unseen eyes. I knew I had narrowly escaped something terrible, something that wanted to ensnare me. I did some research, spoke to the veteran rangers, and delved into the history of Whispering Pines. I learned that the hanging figure is not just a random manifestation. It's a reflection of the forest's deepest malice, born from ancient tragedies and dark rituals performed long ago. The figure is a lure. It preys on our compassion, our curiosity. It wants us to approach, to touch it, to interact with it. And when we do, we become its next victim. It feeds on our fear, our horror, and our souls. I took a deep breath, the fire crackling softly in the background. "Remember Rule 11, I said firmly, meeting each ranger's gaze. "If you ever see a figure hanging from a tree, do not approach it. Turn around and leave immediately. It is not a person in need. It is a trap, a manifestation of the forest's malice waiting for its next victim." As the firelight flickered and the shadows danced, I knew they had grasped the gravity of my words. The forest held many dangers, but none as insidious and malevolent as the hanging figure of Whispering Pines. The fire burned steadily, casting eerie shadows that flickered across the faces of the new rangers. They sat in tense silence, the weight of my story about the hanging figure still heavy in the air. I could see the fear and curiosity in their eyes as they absorbed the tale. It was time to delve deeper into the history behind this malevolent manifestation. To understand the hanging figure, you need to know about the forest's dark past. Whispering Pines is not just an ordinary forest. It has a history steeped in tragedy and dark rituals. Centuries ago, there was a village on the outskirts of this forest. The villagers practiced forbidden rituals, seeking protection from invaders and harsh winters. They believed that appeasing the forest spirits with sacrifices would grant them safety and prosperity. One particularly brutal winter, the villagers were desperate. They hung their own, men, women, and even children, from the trees, believing that their spirits would protect the village. Instead, the spirits were angered by these unnatural deaths. The forest became cursed, and the malice of those spirits lingered, taking on a life of its own. The hanging figure is a direct result of those dark rituals. It's a manifestation of the forest's anger and sorrow, a trap for the unwary. The figure appears human, but it's nothing more than a lure, designed to draw in those who would show compassion or curiosity. I found old records and journals from those who had encountered the figure before. Their descriptions were eerily similar, a sense of dread, an unnatural silence, and the figure's eyes following them as they approached. Those who ignored the warnings never returned, their fates sealed by the forest's malice. I spoke to some of the veteran rangers who had seen the figure and lived to tell the tale. They described how the figure would twitch and sway as if it were alive, its eyes filled with a malevolent intelligence. They warned me never to approach it, never to touch it, and always to respect the forest's boundaries. The forest's malice is real, and it is deadly. The hanging figure is just one of its many manifestations, a reminder of the ancient curses that still linger in these woods. We must respect the rules and stay vigilant if we are to survive. Remember the history I've shared with you. It is not just a story to scare you. It is a warning, a reminder that Whispering Pines holds many secrets and dangers. Respect the rules, stay alert, and never underestimate the forest's power. The firelight flickered, casting long shadows as the new rangers sat in quiet reflection. The night was filled with the whispers of the wind and the rustling of leaves, a constant reminder of the forest's presence. Stay safe, and remember, if you ever see that figure hanging from a tree, walk away. Do not approach it. Your life depends on it. The fire had burned low, casting long, flickering shadows around our circle. The new rangers sat in a tense silence, the stories of the hanging figure and the forest's dark history weighing heavily on their minds. I could see the fear and resolve in their eyes as they contemplated the true dangers lurking in Whispering Pines. After learning about the history and the manifestations of the forest's malice, I knew I had to return to the site of my encounter. I needed to confront my fears. And more importantly, I needed to ensure that the new rangers would be safe. I prepared carefully for my return. I gathered protective talismans, informed my fellow rangers of my plan, and set out on a clear, moonlit night. I knew I couldn't do this alone. But I also knew that it was my duty to face the forest's malice head-on. The night was eerily quiet as I made my way back to the site. The moon cast a ghostly light on the forest, and every rustle of leaves made my heart race. When I finally reached the tree, the figure was there, hanging just as before, but more menacing in the pale light. I paused, letting the image settle in their minds. As I approached cautiously, the atmosphere changed. The temperature dropped, whispers filled the air, and the shadows seemed to move of their own accord. The figure began to sway, its limbs twitching as if coming to life. I stood my ground, holding up a talisman and reciting protective chants I had learned. The figure's form shifted, revealing the faces of past victims, eyes filled with sorrow and rage. I realized then that these spirits were trapped, bound by the forest's curse. I spoke to the spirits. I offered them a chance at peace, promising to uphold the rules and protect others from the same fate. The figure's movements slowed, and its eyes softened. For a moment, the forest seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. The manifestation slowly dissipated, leaving behind a sense of calm and a faint, mournful whisper. I knew then that the spirits had accepted my promise, and I had succeeded in temporarily easing the forest's malice. But remember, the forest's malice is always present. The hanging figure may be gone for now, but the curse remains. It is our duty to respect the rules, stay vigilant, and protect each other from the dangers that lurk in whispering pines. Stay safe, and remember, if you ever see that figure hanging from a tree, walk away. Do not approach it. The firelight flickered, casting long shadows as the new rangers sat in quiet reflection. The night was filled with the whispers of the wind and the rustling of leaves, a constant reminder of the forest's haunting presence.